A torrid affair followed by a mass murder.
Kind of sounds like something out of a crime show, but it actually happened 100 years ago at a place that's become a huge tourist attraction. Shannon Sims is here once again to tell us about a little-known crime involving Wisconsin's most famous architect. Shannon?
Taliesin, the sprawling estate built by famed architect Frank Lloyd Wright in 1911, draws thousands of tourists in tiny Spring Green, Wisconsin every year. But many people probably don't know the dark history behind the serene surface. Frank Lloyd Wright's masterful estate, Taliesin, is a thing of beauty.
He was very interested in location as a source for his architecture.
Built in a hillside, you almost feel like a part of nature.
The thing that makes it such an amazing location is primarily this sense of floating.
It's hard to believe that on this same site 100 years ago, one of the state's most grisly mass murders occurred.
Nobody really wanted to talk about it or think about it or remember it.
Author Ron McCree has long been intrigued by Frank Lloyd Wright.
Frank Lloyd Wright is actually kind of heroic. He's constantly pushing against the grain of the dominant culture of American life and American values.
A prime example? Wright, who was married, fell for Mamah Broderick Cheney, the wife of one of his clients. Before long, they were lovers.
They both wanted more. They wanted, maybe it was a midlife crisis, but they really fell in love.
Frank built Taliesin as a getaway for himself, Mamah, and her young children.
They were riding high.
That happiness was short-lived. House cook Julian Carlton murdered Mamah, her 2 children, and 4 other workers, and set the estate on fire.
His motive is still unknown. He seems to have become paranoid or feeling oppressed or picked on.
Despite medical attention, Carlton died in a jail just a few weeks later, never revealing his motive. And the damage was done. Wright's Spring Green paradise, a distant memory.
It burned his house down, and it destroyed, at that moment, the love of his life. Of course, the house that we're looking at now is not the house that burned down.
Our tour of Taliesin today includes the room where the murders happened.
That's where, in the past, was where Mamah and her 2 children were having lunch on August 15th, 1914. And this is their cemetery.
Less than a mile from the home is Frank's family cemetery, including Mamah's grave. Sid sees it as a beautiful tribute to a life lost far too soon.
If you stand here and you can look up at Taliesin, it's poignant, not creepy.
While the story behind Taliesin may be tragic, Ron feels it could serve as a life lesson for us all.
How much life can be lived in a few years, and how quickly it can all be blown apart.
Well, as a way to cope with his grief, Wright rebuilt Taliesin right away. But it went up in flames again in 1925 due to faulty wiring, so again, he rebuilt it. The estate was donated to the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation after his death in 1959.
The story behind the story of Frank Lloyd Wright
is actually very interesting.
Very much so.
Fascinating. Thank you, Shannon.
No problem.